Paints the designs that fly from the page to mind in our minds. They're inspired, ink inscribes ideas and sights that can change our lives.
Just imagine the two of us like just hanging out,
Yeah.
spot or something, just all like,
Yeah.
yo, homie, what's up?
It's a moment.
Yeah. Welcome everybody to episode 2 of Comics Carnales. I am David Bowles, award-winning author, translator, editor, and co-publisher of Chispa Comics. And with me is Héctor Rodriguez, El Mero Mero, creator of El Peso Hero, and just all around amazing guy.
Kind.
Yeah.
Now,
And you got El Peso Hero behind you right there.
Yeah.
And what is it? Is that a bass behind you as well?
Oh yeah. I used to play bass back in Exo College.
Okay, now we're gonna have to have a little Comics Carnales EP. I've
right.
done my little I've done my little like lo-fi now with the rap song, and you and I will have to like put something together. So yeah, you guys heard it here first. David Bowles coming up with an idea he's gonna rope Héctor into. This is like essentially our existence, right?
Right.
Roping each other into
into projects.
Oh my gosh. So what have you been up to, Héctor?
Oh my gosh, dude, I was at Arizona. They had a El Peso art gallery.
Wow.
Up in Cochise, Arizona, Sierra Vista, near Tucson. Was there a couple days, doing workshops, being a guest at their gallery. Overall, man, it was a great positive experience. There a lot of support. They actually had some Chispa books for me to sign. It was some CATRINA'S CARAVAN fans out there. So,
well, that's good. Hopefully, we're watching tonight because
we're breaking ground in all sorts of areas too. Then I was at a lucha event last night as a host. That's a lot of great talent. It was exciting in Waco, up with Reso Libre, and so we had Commander was there, like a big AAA cruiserweight champion,
Wow.
He's up here with AEW too. And today had a signing at Carpe Diem Comics,
Carpe Diem was great. Yeah,
we had a great turnout. They, a lot of Black Demon fans there, some CATRINA'S CARAVAN fans, and folks were really interested in the 13th, Special Sopilote, and I was like, hey, Batman with a heart, that's the
pitch.
big book.
Yeah. I'm super super excited for all this stuff. I was up at the Texas Book Festival in Austin, and that was pretty amazing as well, getting to hang out. I was on a panel with Neil Schusterman, and he and I got to sign together. Of course, the line stretched all around the tent. It was really, really great. But most of those people were there for Neil to sign their books. But it was kind of cool because a whole bunch of Neil Schusterman fans bought my books as well. And so, hey,
he's done horror, right? I think
he's done. Yeah, he's done
credits, right?
Horror. He's got the Skinjacker series, and Unwind is another. I think it's a duology, and yeah, he's done some really good stuff. Scythe, of course, is
that's right.
Yeah. So he's a great guy, a lot of fun. He's got a graphic novel that just came out, illustrated by Andres Martinez, the illustrator of the gosh, who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. No, I came across the graphic novel.
So we'll
post up the link.
Have those two. Yeah, no, it's really, really great. It's an amazing graphic novel that blends like true stories of the Holocaust with Jewish folklore and fantasy to create these like alternative, almost like what ifs. What if the golem, what if the golem had come back to rip down the gates to the concentration camps. Like this, and just
Oh
amazing.
wow, yeah, that's deep. That's
Well, I'd like to have Martinez and Schuster on. I'm gonna see if I could. I'm gonna. Neil's a good guy, but it would be great if at some point in the future we could have them on. I think it would really.
yeah, reel him in, man.
He's a Latino illustrator, so it would be, I think, really amazing.
That'd be a great conversation.
Yeah.
100%. And so, what have you been working on here at Chispa? Like, what projects have you been dabbing?
So, I mean, we're gearing up for 2024. We are working on the next Black Demon Tales miniseries, which is going to be really, really tight. It's going to, kind of take some of the strands in our 2023 miniseries and like just go deep, 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 deep. In fact, Descent is the subtitle of the miniseries, and you and I are writing an issue of that, and then we've got a guest writer as well. That's going to be pretty amazing. Nick Medrano is going to be guest writing one of those. And then we're planning another great miniseries for Katrina's Caravan, and we're going to have another couple of great Latina authors collaborating with on that one. And which is why I'm so excited that tonight, speaking of horror and speaking of Katrina's Caravan, las meras chingonas of Latina horror in the house. We've got V. Castro and Cynthia Pelayo
with the pillars of Latina.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'm going to introduce them. I'll introduce them one at a time and bring them up. So first up is V. Castro. She's a 2-time Bram Stoker Award-nominated Mexican-American writer from San Antonio, Texas. Represent the 210. She now resides in the UK, where it is freaking cold, apparently. She dedicates her time to family and to writing Latina narratives and horror and science fiction. Her most recent releases include Alien Vasquez, woohoo, super awesome, and The Haunting of Alejandra. And she's about to drop the novelization of the Netflix series from, oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. I'm the guy that did all the DC stuff. Zack Snyder, Zack Snyder, his new sci-fi epic. She's done the novelization, and that's about to come out. So, welcome to the stage, V. Castro. Hola. Go in.
Hello, everyone.
So
awesome exciting. to be here with you guys.
Yeah.
Last time we were all together was San Diego Comic-Con.
That's right.
We were in that little restaurant.
We had some like great birria tacos, right?
Yeah, that was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, birria.
That was awesome. Talent.
Yeah, who else was there? Oh, Kevin Kleinrock was there that night. The Five Meats guys were there. Kevin Garcia.
Super fun.
Oh, how could we forget Kevin Garcia? He was the one who did most of the talking. David. He's like the little embodiment of Coneja, but in sometimes it's funny. Also with us tonight is Cynthia Pelayo. She is a Bram Stoker award-winning author and poet. Her work blends genre, explores grief, mourning, and cycles of violence, and it's just really, really badass. She's the author of Loteria, Santa Muerte, The Missing, Into the Forest, all the way through Children of Chicago and its sequel, The Shoemaker's Magician, among many others. Just an incredible writer, and we're so happy to have her here. Hey, Sina, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, we're super excited because when people think Latina horror, if they know anything about it, your names are like the first up on the list. So we wanted to have you on and have you chatting. And like V, we know that it is after 11:30 in the UK right now. So
that's all right.
Staying up with us. And I mean, it is dark and cold and
anything for my people.
Do you find that the UK is conducive to writing horror because of that kind of stuff? Or
oh my God, I mean, look, there's so many places I've visited. When I was kind of still beginning to write, and my youngest was born, I would drive around hour, 2 hours with my baby in the car and go to all these haunted places and push her in the pushchair and put her in the little thing, strappy thing. And there's some really creepy places. There are some scary ass
Oh, no.
ruins, Roman ruins. I mean,
Oh,
abbeys. I mean, who knows what kind of witchcraft was performed there. No, it's really cool. No, absolutely. And where I'm living now, you've got all of the trees. It's misty. It's cold. It's pretty cool. And the coast is really something else because it's freezing water and the waves just come up and it's very gothic. But I love it. I do.
yeah, and Sina, you're in Chicago, and for some reason, speaking of Gothic, when I think of Gothic, I mean, I think of Chicago a lot as well. Do you? I mean, a lot of your work is centered around Chicago, and I wonder if you think that like living there, like has an influence on your writing or whatever.
It's definitely the centerpiece of my writing today. I mean, I was born in Puerto Rico, but I was raised in Chicago. We came here when I was about 2. My parents were back and forth before I was born, but I remember growing up, my father was always like, well, even though you don't live there, you're Latina, you still speak Spanish and this is still your culture, you're still Puerto Rican. But Chicago was our home, and I remember my dad just taking me on the train, or we call it the L, and we would go downtown and we'd go to City Hall to pay the bills, because back then you'd pay your bills, your house payment at City Hall, and we'd hang out a lot in Humboldt Park, which was historically the Puerto Rican neighborhood. And I just remember falling in love with the city as much as, like, I identified my father with the city because he loved it here so much. And so he died in March. And so for me, it's kind of like, well, he's still here in every aspect of the city. And I grew up in inner city Chicago, and it's still where I live. And so granted, while the neighborhood is gentrified or is gentrifying, I mean, the reality of guns, gangs, drugs, and violence was part of my upbringing. I have friends that killed people and went to jail for life. I have many friends that were murdered as part of growing up in inner city, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Even up until 2 years ago, I had a friend that was just leaving the bar, just a regular night. He was carjacked and killed. And I remembered all of us from high school were on a message like, we thought we got out. We thought we got out, and we still are losing people. And so it was important for me to stay in the neighborhood, to be a reflection of a light of positivity, that you can live your dreams and still live here in this community and be a part of the community. And so Chicago is what I am. It's where I'm gonna die here. I mean, I already told my husband I want my ashes scattered in the Humboldt Park Lagoon. That's where the Puerto Rican neighborhood, and it's my home, and it's what I try to pay homage to now.
Yeah. I totally. I mean, that's the way I feel about the border. So I get you 100%. That's really, really amazing. And like V, I mean, you're from Texas, you're from San Antonio, and you come back here all the time. So it's not like
Yeah.
you're like stuck cloistered away in the UK.
No, my whole family's there. Yeah. And the reason why I live here is because I co-parent. And it's just kind of one of those things where, I'm not going to abandon my children. So I'm here and making the best of it. And I come to the US when I can, but also at the same time, there are a lot of things about the US that I feel are really wrong. And so I'm at peace being here, and I'm at peace with my children being here. But I never, ever thought I would be living in another country, let alone England. And it's just kind of the way life has happened. And so I'm here co-parenting with my children in school. And
we got a question. We got a question for you right here from Rafael Flores. How are Latinos treated over there?
A lot of people think I'm Asian. And when they say Asian in the UK, they mean Indian. A lot of people don't even consider that the word Mexican, like there's just not that. There's no, a majority of the labor force, for example, up until Brexit has been Eastern European or from Southeast Asia. Some people think I'm Spanish, but there's no real concept of being Mexican American. Whereas when I go to the US, it's like, oh yeah, she's one of them. I've had a few microaggressions, but only because people don't know kind of where I'm from and they guess and just kind of say ignorant things. And I just brush it off because it is just simple not knowing. It's simple ignorance. And I'm strong enough in my identity and who I am that I just kind of, okay. But other than that, I mean, I'm treated fine again, but there's no concept of it's a tiny island. It's very small.
Identity.
So it's interesting.
Yeah,
but again, I've been able to travel a lot of different places and see a lot of parts of the world because it is such a central area to fly from.
Yeah, no, that is true. Much more so than San Antonio.
And drive. You can drive to Europe in like a couple hours.
Go through the tunnel right under the.
Exactly.
Yeah, what is it called? The channel or whatever.
Yeah, the you can go by ferry, but that takes hours. The channel tunnel.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, my sister-in-law, who's from Monterrey, lived in London for like 3 years, and told me, there's plenty of Latin Americans living there, but we kind of go incognito because they don't realize what we are. So that's really
you just kind of go with the flow. You're like, all right.
But I mean, identity is like so important in both of your work. I mean, you're able to write. What is so cool about your work is that yes, like identity is important to you, but like you're not hung up on it. You're both able to move in and out and write all kinds of things, and you're unabashedly Latinas. But you're also like, I will write whatever the fuck I want to write. I'm not gonna like be constrained by my Latinidad, and I just think that's so amazing. So I've mentioned a couple of things, some of your work or whatever, and hinted at the Rebel Moon novelization that V's doing. But why don't you both just kind of like get us caught up? What's going on? What are you working on? What's been out recently? Just like what's up? V, start with you, and then we'll go to Sina.
Yeah, I mean, the next book that's coming out, so The Haunting of Alejandra has been out, which, there's some exciting things coming up. I can't talk about yet, but really going with it. But the next thing that I'm really excited about is in April, I have a book called Immortal Pleasures coming out, and it's very much in the vein of, oh God, that sounds really stupid, in the vein. So I didn't even mean that, of Anne Rice.
It would have been funny, in the vein, and then you're like little vampire teeth.
Exactly. Anne Rice and Poppy Z. Bright, 50 Shades of Grey. But it's La Malinche, Malinali, because we have all these stories of her, and she was so important in our history, in our culture, but a lot of her history was erased. A lot of it, has been downplayed, or she's been called a traitor, a lot of different things. And then you have the art where you have her, these romanticized paintings of her, like, lovingly in the arms of Hernan Cortez. I don't think so. I wanted to reclaim her story, her identity. What would she say if she could? If she didn't die at 28 from smallpox,
right.
And if she had time on her hands, if she could become more than her history and the place she was assigned, and had agency over her own life and her body and her sexuality. And that's what Immortal Pleasures is. I pieced together her history with Cortez, and a little bit when she's younger, but because of what I imagine most likely happened to her. I don't go into detail of that. I don't like to talk about abuse or any of that.
Yeah. And you know there was probably like
Yeah,
more than we could really stomach, even.
exactly. And so I said to the editors, like, I'm not writing that. I'm writing about her personal power and her transformation and her potential and who she was and how she could command this power. And also eventually getting her own back. You know, vengeance is a great thing when you have time. And so I give her that life, that piece together her history, and give her more, and what it would look like for a, you know, indigenous woman to live through the ages in Mexico and then Texas. I take her to, you know, through the revolution and back again. And then eventually, you know, in modern times where she's this insanely successful woman and she's, you know, enjoying herself in all the ways she couldn't. And then there's the mystery and, you know, so that is the big thing that I want people to really get involved in, because there's so, you know, I feel like in a lot of ways, Latinas, brown women, Black women, you know, we are relegated to safe spaces, to safe stories, to safe genres, because, you know, we're threats. We are often looked as threats. We're like, you know, spicy, trying to take everybody's man, and we're this and we're that. Why can't we write about our sexuality? Why can't we be dangerous and own that and be real about it? And so that's what I want this book to be. You know, The Haunting of Alejandra was about motherhood and generational trauma, going back to the conquest and teasing apart what it's like to be in a long-term relationship with children and what that really means, taking away the romance of that, taking away what that's supposed to look like and how we're supposed to react to it. You know, it's not always great. It's not always beautiful. It's parenthood is hard. And so I wanted to show that. And postpartum depression is not something that we talk about a lot, especially in our communities. We've heard a lot in white communities, and but we don't. I want to talk about mental health. I want to show the vulnerability and the hardness. I wanted to also show the demon of depression and pain that can eat you alive.
It's a huge stigma in our community.
So, and then, you know, Rebel Moon's great because it's just fun and it's lively. It's, you know, and kind of, you know, going down the road of Star Wars and all those things. So
the space opera.
Yeah, it's really great. It's really fun. So I hope everybody watches it.
I mean, you know, yeah. When I don't know about you, Hector, but when I saw the like names of the characters in Rebel Moon, I was like, this sounds really, really white. All these names are really, really white. And then when I heard that you were writing a novelization, I was like, oh, okay, that'll be interesting, because I know that she'll find ways to make the diversity of those characters, despite their names, like pop. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had to write it off the script, so I had very little room to like, unlike Aliens Vasquez, where I had a lot of room to just go like ham. You know, she's got a Santa Muerte tattoo on her back and an altar, and you know, I talk about the eggs being like cascarones, but this I had to really kind of walk the line with the script. But he did a great job with diversity. I mean, it really is pretty cool.
That's good to know. That's the other thing I think that a lot of us are like relieved, because to see you take on the novelization project, we'll be like, okay, well, that's like, she wouldn't take on something that do right by its characters and wasn't diverse. So that's good. All right. And and you mentioned that you may be going to the Tucson Book Festival. You're gonna be in the US next year, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll be actually, I think Sina's going to be there in New Hampshire in Jan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably get stuck snowed in.
Oh, I can't wait. So yeah, for Christopher Golden is having an event in New Hampshire. So we're all going to that. So that should be fun.
Very, very cool. Well, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to like how the Malinche book just sounds incredible. You know that's like my mero mole, and I'm really excited to see your twist on it. It'll be just amazing, and just like I'm already imagining in your voice these things.
It's
And
triple hot, so it is really like really graphic. I did not hold back.
No. Yeah, you're not one to actually hold back unless your editor's like, can you please hold back a little bit? I mean,
They
because
were like at Del Rey, were like, go for it. I'm like, I will.
they're like, we don't even know who this woman is. Just go for it.
Exactly.
What about you, Sina? What do you got going on?
What do I have going on? Well, this past year I re-released Loteria, and that was a revised edition with new content, revised stories from that was initially my MFA thesis from the School of Art Institute back in like 2010. So that was released, and then the Shoemaker's Magician was released, and it was a little bit of a difficult hit because my father died, and the next day the Shoemaker's Magician was released, and I was like, well, this is going to be great promoting a novel while I'm very openly grieving. And then so that was a little bit on pause, being able to promote that book. So like the last few months I've been pretty heavily promoting the Shoemaker's Magician, and then upcoming I have Forgotten Sisters that'll be out in March. And while Loteria deals with like Latin American myth, folklore, superstition, and legend, I think my works generally deal with just storylines that there might be diverse characters within it. Like Children of Chicago is an adaptation. And when I write adaptation, well, I write genre blending works that are perhaps grounded in horror, but that have heavy elements of mystery and speculative fiction, because that's kind of like my comfort area: mystery, crime, and horror. And so Children of Chicago is an adaptation of the Pied Piper fairy tale, and its follow-up, The Shoemaker's Magician, it's really still kind of like a standalone, but that deals more with Aesop's fables and Chicago's history as Hollywood. Chicago was Hollywood before there was Hollywood. There was like the silent film capital of the world. Charlie Chaplin worked here. And it also deals with like the history of the horror host, since that figure kind of prominently is fixed in Chicago with a character like Svengoolie. So that's what the Shoemaker's Magician's about. And it does have diverse characters. Like the protagonist is Paloma Ramos, who's kind of like a YouTube horror host. But Forgotten Sisters, the characters in that are Irish and Norwegian and Dutch. And it takes place in the modern era, but it kind of harkens back to an event that happened in Chicago in 1915, in which a lot of people died. And it's a traditional Gothic mystery that takes place in the city. And it also deals with a very pressing issue that we have a suspected serial killer operating in the city of Chicago that has been targeting young men, particularly of college age, that they've just been found in the river. So there also is commentary about how immigrants were treated in like 1915. And, you know, I'm hoping that people can see the parallels, how people that came to work in the factories here in the city of Chicago in 1915 are still being treated very similarly. It's the issue of, we just haven't dealt with a lot of the issues that we've dealt with over time. They continue to repeat themselves, just like these cycles of violence continue to repeat themselves. So Forgotten Sisters is probably not like a traditional horror novel. It's more, it's being categorized as a psychological thriller. It's a mystery, supernatural mystery. And then the novel that I'm working on after that, it's still within the same category, in the same space. It's also going to be a fairy tale adaptation. Forgotten Sisters is an adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's version of The Little Mermaid. and I can't say what the fairy tale is for the next one, but that one will be out in 2025. And I'm also working on 2 poetry collections, one of which I'm collaborating with a friend on, and like an experimental novella, because I still like to do experimental work. So those are, I think, the major things that I have going on right now. I'm taking like a social media break to focus on the writing and to, I mean, that's my focus, is the writing and creating art. It's never been so much. I think the last few years I kind of fell into the stuff, into the you know, presence of being an author, and that's never like really the position that I wanted to be in. I just want to be a creator. I just want to create art. And I think that's probably where I'm being redirected to. My focus is just being able to create things that are beautiful and that are thought provoking. And so, like I told you before we joined, I'm like, I finally deleted it, Twitter. I'm done. I'm gone. Just like, okay, because I think that for me, like the mental space of creation is much more important. It's like, this is what matters, is being able to do these beautiful things and to share them with people. Like I as a person don't, I know that people see me as a role model in this space, and I want to be a role model in this space, but it's much more important for me for them to go to my writing, because if you want to know who I am, I would rather you gather that from my poetry or my fiction than a post on social media.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I applaud you. Every single day I ask myself, is this the day that I delete this damn account? Is this the day? Because it is so toxic. And you're right, you shouldn't have to like just spend all your energy fighting against that tide of and it's a deliberately curated tide. Like they you know, it wants it to be that way.
And I just don't care. Like, I've literally gotten to the space where like I just don't care. I just don't care anymore. Like I have like stacks of books here. Like I just want to do that. I just want to read. I have like Gwendolyn Keist's new book, and I want to like just get lost in this. And I have like tons of poetry books that I just kind of want to enjoy and consume. And like I'm at the coffee shop with my children, and I have like these little like field notebooks everywhere, and I'm constantly just writing, and I'm constantly I'm finding much more space and time without that, that buzzing of social media in my head. And that's where I want to be. I want to just create. And so I'm very proud of Forgotten Sisters. I think if there's any piece of work of mine, if anybody asks like, well, where should I start with your work? I'm going to say Forgotten Sisters. And while it's not a piece of, you would consider literature that includes a heavy, diverse aspect, I would say in a way it does, just because of the historical component. It's still a detective novel. There's still like that procedural aspect of it, but that's the type of writing I feel like I'm going more towards. It's a little quieter and it's a little bit more thoughtful. And I think that's the artist that I want to be.
Almost like writing for comics, right? You have to really put yourself and write as detail as much as you want to portray on one panel. And especially when we're talking about Catrina's Caravan, right? Because this is a whole different medium of art for you. I mean, for V, for Sina, you guys, was this the first time for you guys to go into the comic book world?
Yes, it was exciting. I've always wanted to do a comic. That's what I remember. My mom said, she's like, oh, you used to always read comics when you were a little kid. And I did, and I just never thought I would ever get into comics. And then like recently Daniel Krauss did a comic, and I was like, well, Daniel Krauss could do comics. I want to do comics too. And I really liked his comic. And so when this opportunity came, I was like super excited, because I was like, and I knew exactly which one it was, because just visually I thought of the story of the Alacran and like the little boy with the lucha libre mask and on the train, and that's what I wanted to do. So it was
so Sina, what kind of experiences you brought that? Because I love it how the story's very dark, but then Eliana Falcon's art is
so
not. It's a huge contrast, which is so fitting.
She's
or just to gravitate, get you. So what kind of experiences did you bring to that story?
Well, first, thank you so much for finding a Puerto Rican illustrator. I was like, that got me so, like, let me just, I don't want to give it away, but like her artwork is just so beautiful. Like she just did such a fantastic job. But I think in terms of like, what was the question again? Like what my influence was?
Or no, like just how the process was like to adapt a short story and you know, and to see it, you know, to adapt it and then to see it like, you know, in this incredible art that Eliana did.
Medium. Yeah.
It wasn't that difficult for me to adapt it, and I hate to say that because it's not that it's easy. It's not an easy process at all. But I think it's because I knew the story so well, and I had it. I mean, I wrote this story over a decade ago, but I've rewritten it since I've read it. It's like usually one of the stories I like to read. I read it at there's a Latinx variety show, improv show here in Chicago, called Los Antojitos, and I read this for them. And so I just performatively, I just know how it should look. And so when I started writing out the panels, I just visually knew, even though I have aphantasia, which I don't have a visual memory. So if you ask me to imagine like what does an apple look like, I don't have any, it's just black up there. But I go, when I write things or read things, I go through the feeling of it, which I know this doesn't make any sense to people with visual memory, but I just knew like how it should be split, each panel, if that makes sense. But it was just wonderful to be able to see how she executed it. I was like, she's like brilliant. This is completely brilliant how she was able to do this. So.
The color's so vibrant, the art's so clean, but when you go into something very dark, contrasting, it really pulls the reader in. It's like, whoa, this is a turn.
Right? I love it.
It's like, this is so cute, but then there's like blood everywhere. I loved it. I mean, yeah. I have a 10-year-old, and he kind of like, he's like into like horror kind of now.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to kind of see the gateway horror things that he'll get into is very similar. It's like very cute, but then there's like a monster. I'm like, what the hell? So,
I thought it worked lovely, and I mean, I just love all these Chicago things, the L, and these other things that you know. Obviously, maybe the story was written, you know, before your son was born or when he was really young. But it feels like there's like definitely a mother's kind of like, you know, perspective on this. But there's also, I mean, clearly the boy is like the main protagonist here, and so we're seeing. I feel like
the tired mother on the train with her kids, like, I guess, like, yeah, no, that's
you're like, I know that experience. And
I didn't have kids when I wrote this story.
Which is really cool. I mean, it's great, but you know, I think that Eliana brings something really great to it, and you did a fantastic job at adaptation, and you shouldn't feel bad about, you know, saying that it was relatively easy for you, because I want more and more writers to think of it that way, to think of it is less difficult to move from writing prose into writing comics than you might imagine. There's just some things you have to learn, you know, economy of words and dialogue and stuff like that. But you know, once you get that, once you get it, you get it. Yeah. What about you, V? You know, why did you pick the story you picked? And
yeah, because, you know, I love writing dangerous women of color. I like showing and expressing full expression of sexuality, claws, fangs, curves. Yes, they're dangerous. Yes, they're going to get you. Watch out. I just unapologetically love, I just feel this need to take that space and express that completely. And because again, I feel like women of color, they're not given enough space, and they should take up space when they're not given it. Just take it. Don't ask. Don't pretend to fit where you think you need to fit. Just take it. Just push people aside and do it. And that's what I loved about this story is, you know, she's, you know, this creature who's lived in this area since before humans. And suddenly the tourists come calling to Cancun, taking up space.
The story does not hold back, as you can see. It's just
No,
And
it does
I
not.
love,
does not hold back. It's just
and for me, and I agree with Sina, it was actually quite easy for me to adapt the story because I loved it. I knew it. I could see it in my head and really imagine it. And I wanted to show her. I wanted her to be seen. And so for me, this was like a dream come true. And I love comics. I've always loved comics. I remember as a little girl watching, G.I. Joe and She-Ra
yeah.
and all of these cartoons. And so for me, getting a comic is like, oh my God, this is my opportunity to like live this fantasy and write a cartoon, even though it's not a cartoon.
Right.
But also, at the same time, adapting my books to screenplays, which has been, again, it's kind of in that same field where you have to just pare it back. You have to take it to the bare bones, your novella, your novel. And so for me, this was great practice while I was adapting stuff. And I loved it. And for people to visualize these women and to feel attracted, but also threatened by them. And I love that. To me, that's great. If you feel both insanely attracted, but also threatened and scared, I've done my job.
What's that phrase?
And for me,
aroused and scared, or I'm so.
Yes.
What's that?
And so, for this story was a natural fit for me. I wanted it, and it was quite fun. It was for a anthology, and I couldn't think of a better story. And it was one of like my readers. It was one of their favorite.
Oh.
And I have an erotic collection coming out in like 2025 where it's called the Pink Agave Motel, where you're going to see all of these mythological creatures coming to one place. And it's like beautiful chaos. But again, quite visual.
If people love El Cucuy de Cancun, then that's where they can like get more, right?
They can get more. And a while back, I self-published a little short erotic collection because I didn't know what the market was like or how people would perceive it. So I self-published a little thing called Sed de Sangre. And all those stories are going into the Pink Agave Motel. But again, the characters people loved. And I took a lot of the mythology of Mexico and wanted to bring these characters and these creatures and these ideas to modern day. Like, why should they not exist anymore? Why should they be forgotten? It's part of my blood, part of my ancestry. One day I'll be an ancestor. One day I will be giving over my personal power and energy to someone. And I truly believe that I'm getting that. And I have not an obligation, but I feel a real calling to pass that on and give it to others, to inspire others. But also it grounds me. It makes me feel good about what I'm doing and my place in the world and in this gig, because writing is not always easy. So you've got to enjoy what you're doing. You've got to love it. You've got to really love it. And it's got to really be in your soul and resonate with you. Otherwise, what's the point? So this was a dream come true to do it. I loved it.
So cool.
And I definitely, highly recommend anyone else, if you're thinking about it, but you're unsure, you're scared, you feel insecure, don't, just do it. Like, what's the worst going to happen? Like, you make a mistake, someone gives you a critique or, says, hey, why don't you do this? Don't be afraid. Do it. Write the story.
That was actually one of the many questions that I got while I was visiting colleges in Arizona was how do I start? And second, how do I deal with writer's block? Those two were like the major, I know, very questions these college kids had.
Writer's block isn't real. You just
Yeah.
write one word after. There's no
There
such.
you go.
You just write, like literally.
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning and I do something called artist pages. And so I wake up in the morning and I write 3 pages stream of consciousness. You just write, and it's just like just to start kind of getting these creative muscles moving. It's like sometimes you might not know where the story's going, and you just need to just put one word after the other. Like Neil Gaiman says, just put one word after the other, and you can write like 20,000 words, and maybe from it you're only going to use 500, or they're only good 1,000. But you just need to do it. Sometimes it's not like, I mean, I'm not precious. I don't have like a routine. I have to be able to write anywhere, anytime, with whatever utensil or instrument that I have, because of my children. Both my kids are on the autism spectrum, and my youngest is more traditionally autistic. And so I just have to be able to write in any type of condition. And so if you're waiting for like the muse to strike, and you're waiting to have like the perfect cup of coffee and to wake up at a certain time, you just gotta write. Just write the thing. Just get it done. And that's how you do it. And writing is a game of attrition, and it's not, for some people it happens a cantazo. You get your big deal, and you after writing a few months, or your first book, and it's great, good for you. But for many people it's like 10, 15 years you're writing in the industry, and it's never like, when I got my traditional book deal, I remember Gabino Iglesias called me, and he was like, "You didn't make it. There's no such thing as making it." And I was like, "You're right. You're 100% right. There's no such thing as making it." And it's like, well, of course there's milestones and things I would like to accomplish, but for me, the making it is just sitting down and writing. That's literally it. It's literally
making the art. That's the only thing that you need to make. Yeah. It's
like, well, I mean, like, what is, if you're looking for something external to satisfy you, you're never going to find the accomplishment. Like, literally it all comes from within. And so you have to let go of these conditions that you think will make your life perfect. Your life is already perfect. You're already perfect. You're already a perfect creator. You just need to do the thing and be happy with the thing and feel good about the thing. And that's it. Everything else is just extra. It's like, you wake up in the morning, you have your health, you have your happiness that comes from within, and you just write the words. It's okay. Just create. That's the point, the creation.
What about you, V?
No, absolutely. I mean, again, if what you're writing doesn't resonate with you, and you don't really feel it in your soul, then what's the point? Because again, you will be, chasing outside validation. I actually just did a thing on TikTok about end of year lists, because we're approaching that time. And, I was very grateful to be on a list, and I said, this is great. But for all of you, just let me tell you about lists. There are so many years I didn't get a single list, or you're reading those lists. Hey, take it in. It does not reflect on you. Every list is curated. There's so many variables that go in. It's just a list, but it is, part of that pressure. And, social media definitely adds to that. Absolutely. As this, it's like, creating this false competition, when really, the only competition you should have is with yourself. Okay, what do I want to achieve? Am I feeling happy? Am I healthy? What do I want to write about? If there's no words, do I need a break? Because sometimes part of you being a creator is taking a break and resting that muscle, and saying, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to garden. I'm going to cook. I'm going to, go to museums for a week straight.
And I know it's easy. I know people are probably watching, and they're probably like, well, it's so easy for Sina and B to say that. But how many years did we do this and we just did it because we enjoyed it.
And you just, yeah, it just happened, it just, things kind of happen. So they'll happen and then it's really slow. But again, social media, it's nice to post the things that are happening or things that are coming, events, and that's what people see and they think that's what it is, but it's really not. There's so much more.
Diana Rodriguez Wallach, she had a really good TikTok about this. And she was like, that's publishing is just, because she's been writing for like, I think 2 decades. And she's like, publishing is, it's peaks and valleys. 1 year you may be up, and then the next few years, and that's just that's the industry. And if you're enjoying this, then it never feels like it's, difficult. You have to enjoy it. Like, because why else would you want to do something that you have to like revise your edits like 10 times?
And again, take a break. I always say, take a break. Do something that's going to refresh you. I'm quite lucky. For me, writer's block, my problem is I have too many ideas and not enough time to write everything.
Yeah. And the opportunity that you might want, the opportunity that you might be manifesting probably isn't even there yet. And I remember when I got this deal, I remember being like, shit, I've been trying to manifest this traditional book deal for so long, and they weren't even really a thing, because now I'm really happy with the publisher that I'm with. Like I look at them and I'm like, this is the perfect home for me, because they publish the types of things I like. They have the type of energy I like. They're very, very corporate and they're very organized, which I need because my life is so chaotic with the kids and everything is so buttoned up that I'm like, maybe if you're writing right now and the opportunities aren't coming to you, maybe it's because those opportunities are just not there yet. And the perfect thing is going to come when it's in its time.
And everybody's journey is different. The publisher they should be with is different. The editor, the agent, all of these things are different. And I am a big fan of, making your own table. If you really want it, make your own space. Just go for it. Again, don't look at who's in front of you, who's behind you, who's next to you.
And everyone,
you need to look at your path.
And everyone, at least and we've gone on a tangent about Latino writers, but like if you think of like the Latino writers that are, pretty prominent right now in horror, everyone's so different. Everyone, what they write and what they cover is so different. I mean, Gabino's got, border noir, and, V's really like embedded in like the folklore and the historical components and these legends and mythology. Isabel Cañas has like these sweeping historical romances. And so Sylvia Moreno Garcia kind of like straddles across, so many things. And I'm crime, mysteries, spec. So we're all very different. And so, like V said, make your own table. Like there's so many different things that you could think of and write. And there's so many different Latino voices and Latino experiences, regardless of like where you live. All of our experiences are so different, as you can see from what we read and write.
That's really amazing. So before we let y'all go, I'm just like checking the comments. There is and though it's put to V, I bet that also is probably going to be a great question to kind of close with. And she writes kind of a long comment, and she's talking about the Malinche project, and she says, in your book, will I find respect towards women for women's sake, or respect towards women as women? It's written in Spanish. It says, en tu libro encontraría yo el respeto hacia la mujer por ella misma. I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'll let the two of you. In your books, is there respect towards women, as women for their own sake, not because of, what I'm saying? Not because of objectification, whatever. I mean, I know the
respeto a la mujer.
Yeah, respeto a la mujer por ella misma.
So everything I write is from my short stories and up to the novels. If you've read The Haunting of Alejandra, it ends with, you know, she became her own medicine woman, and she could be medicine for others. You know, for me, it's all about personal empowerment. For me, when it comes to, you know, vampirism, and in La Malinche, it's about transformation. I've written another vampire novel that's going to be published with Titan in a few years. And again, it's about transformation. It's about you coming in, you know, you're brought into this world, into this life, and everybody's going to tell you who you should be, what you should be, where you should be. They're going to put you in a station, in a box. But is that what your soul is? Is that who you're meant to be? What is your soul purpose? What are the lessons that you didn't learn before? What are the things your ancestors didn't achieve, but you can? So it is all about, for me, personal empowerment. So that respect comes from self-love, self-respect. Part of that is making mistakes. It just is, because how do you have wisdom if you do not live, if you do not fall sometimes, if you cannot have a moment where you are on your knees and you have no idea what to do or where to go? It's very human, and we've all been there. And that, for me, is a respect, because you humble yourself and you understand, I'm not invincible. I've got to self-reflect. And so, yes, there's lots of respect for the person. I would never exploit myself, because, you know, I have self-love, but I also write characters that don't have that, because I didn't always have that. So for me, it is a journey. I like to show that journey, because it's something we all go through. And I want the characters to have that realistic kind of experience. And, you know, for me, life in itself is a sensual experience. We see it through our eyes, we feel it, we smell it, we taste it. It's not always great, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, definitely. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry if it didn't.
That's beautifully said. Sina, anything that you would add to those thoughts?
I guess quickly for me, I mean, I'm asexual, so I'm open about my asexuality. So I don't know what like sexual attraction is. So for me, when I write about women, I kind of write it from like my own identity, my own concept. And for me, relationships are very different, and what's important for a relationship. So I write a lot about relationships that don't have sex as a major component. It's more like emotional. For me, emotional intimacy is what is like very important for me. And so I write a lot about women and emotional intimacy. I write a lot about women that are powerful and are very demanding and that expect and demand respect. But in terms of like bodies and relationships, I just don't know how to even write that type of narrative. And so I kind of write it from my own perspective, where I write a lot about relationships, friendships for me. I write a lot about mother and children relationships, women relationships and bond. And so I feel like that's my cornerstone. Like my importance is the emotional connection with women and other people, and how we demand to be respected and honored and accepted regardless of our situation and our space. So I hope that answers. I think that's kind of where the question was going, in terms of like respect and ownership and command of identity. And so when I write about identity, I know like my editor at Thomas and Mercer, there was like a scene that kind of implied that the characters had sex, but they didn't. It was just like they kind of held each other and they circled this, like, did they have sex there? And I was like, no, I'm ace. so I mean, that's just kind of like
It's like your lens. Yeah.
It's my lens, and so I didn't know sexual attraction was a thing. I just didn't know it because that's my experience, and so it's been interesting. when I read things, I'm like, oh, like I'm like my 40s, and I still fast forward sex scenes because I don't understand. I don't
But
understand.
what I love is you're both like such incredible writers and write such horrific stories that are also so like moving and so so insightful into human nature. And yet, you know, V's writing is like full of like this like burgeoning like flowering sexuality, and Tina's is like there's romantic elements and so forth, but not sexual elements. And I think it's wonderful, and we need that. We need the entire gamut. We need all these
brain.
Yeah. So, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. It was wonderful talking to you. We want to share just really quickly a couple of things before we sign off. I'm going to share my screen really quick, Hector, just to show the main Katrina's Caravan. So they can see that these are our three the three issues of the miniseries that came out last year, and they'll be collected in graphic novel form in time for next Halloween. So like late summer they'll come out. And you can see there that Katrina's Caravan is a creepy anthology featuring stories by the best Latina writers of horror, as told by Katrina, a suspicious harbinger of darkness on the run from a violent priest. And so these things that V and Sina have been talking about in terms of women's representation and empowerment, and just being able to be gray, difficult characters, unabashedly. That's what Katrina embodies. And there's a frame story around each one of these stories, and she becomes more and more interesting, and a little bit like the monsters in the monster. Frankly, like the monstrous, like the femme monsters or monstrous women, in a way you could say, in the two stories that V and Sina allowed us to publish in the pages of this anthology. Katrina is that way as well. And so we really encourage people who are fascinated by that sort of thing, by difficult but fully embodied and completely autonomous women, to consider checking out both El Alacrán and El Cucuy de Cancún and the entire miniseries, and be on the lookout for the next iteration. And Hector, before we go, can you give everybody updates on upcoming Chispa stuff?
Yes, most definitely. Just to let all of our folks in the Chispaverse, we have The Wake. The final cutoff order is November 19th. So please call your local comic book shops, support the shops, and order The Wake, our third book in the 13 Origins. Also, keep in mind, Power Class will be out the end of the month. So go ahead and call and see if you can put a note for that. Just keep an eye out for the Scout website will have pre-orders up for that soon. So Power Class, the end of the month, and the 19th for you guys to place your orders.
Yeah, I muted my mic, and I'm like, oh, I'm talking, and it's like, your mic is muted, bro. Just wanted to add that, of course, The Wake is written by the amazing Jasmine Mendez and her husband Lupe Mendez, who's the outgoing Texas Poet Laureate, and illustrated by Ray Pelcastre, who's an awesome Afro-Latina, Afro-Mexicana illustrator. Just a great book. Gotta pick it up. So thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Sin and V for Sin. I'm sorry, Tina. I don't know if anybody calls you Sin. I have a friend named Cynthia who I call Sin. And but anyway, we're just going to keep shortening your names more and more until V is just
we kept to be awake. We promised to be entertaining, so we did it.
Yes, all right. And oh my gosh, thank you all so much. and have a really, really wonderful week and Thanksgiving holiday. See you really soon. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Read more comics.
Absolutely. Read more comics and come to chispacomics.com for so much more.
Yes.
Nos vemos pronto. Our next show is going to be episode 3, and we will be talking with the creators of The Wake that I named a while ago, Jasmine, Faye, and Faye. So check this out towards the end of November. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Adios.
Bye.